Ladies and gentlemen, every human being is powered by two invisible forces, love and purpose. They're not separate. They're two sides of the same neural coin. One ignites the heart, the other drives the mind. And yet, when these two synchronize, something extraordinary happens. Innovation doesn't just accelerate, it becomes inevitable. When we talk about human greatness, we often discuss intelligence, persistence, or vision. But neuroscience is beginning to uncover something more profound: emotional synchrony. It's the way the brain of a person in love changes its architecture, optimizes reward circuits, sharpens creative cognition, and reshapes the brain's energy distribution. What's fascinating is that these same mechanisms are at the root of what we call genius. So, when we ask, what's the hidden connection between a person's success and their love life? We're not asking a poetic question. We're asking a neurological one. The brain is not a machine that operates in isolation. It's a social organ. Every decision, every risk, every invention is influenced by emotional feedback loops that begin not in logic but in attachment. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. The same brain regions that light up when we feel passion for a partner also activate when we feel passion for an idea. Neuroscientists have a name for this: the dopaminergic coupling effect. When someone experiences emotional closeness, love, trust, or deep connection, their brain produces a cocktail of neurotransmitters that amplify focus, motivation, and resilience. Dopamine for drive, oxytocin for bonding, serotonin for stability, and norepinephrine for alertness. It's like a natural neural accelerator, and when a person like that turns toward creation, toward work, invention, exploration, they're not doing it alone. Their emotional state amplifies their neurological efficiency. That's why the stories of great innovators are never just stories of intellect. They're stories of the heart. Behind every great leap in technology, art, or science, there's often a relationship, sometimes harmonious, sometimes turbulent, that fuels it. Let me give you an example from neuroscience. A study conducted at Stanford observed the brains of high-performing individuals who were also in deeply connected relationships. The findings were stunning. Their prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and innovation, showed increased coherence with the limbic system, the emotional brain. In other words, love made their logic smarter. Emotion and reason were not competing. They were collaborating. Now think about what happens when someone like that channels this energy into a mission. When their emotional world aligns with their intellectual one, they enter what psychologists call a state of emotional congruence. This state is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term creativity. It's not just motivation. It's sustained, renewable energy that doesn't burn out easily. In the case of someone whose entire life revolves around building the future, space travel, electric energy, AI, human potential, the stability or chaos of their love life doesn't just stay in the background. It intertwines with their work. When that love life is stable, they experience emotional resonance, an amplifying field for cognitive flow. When it's chaotic, it triggers an oscillation in the same circuits that control obsession, drive, and risk-taking, and strangely enough, that too can fuel progress. You see, the human brain doesn't neatly separate pain from purpose. It often transforms one into the other. That's why heartbreak has driven as many breakthroughs as love itself. Both states activate the ventral tegmental area, which floods the brain with dopamine, the same chemical responsible for innovation, perseverance, and discovery. So, when someone experiences emotional loss, the brain tries to compensate by finding new sources of meaning. And that's where creation begins. It's no coincidence that some of history's most revolutionary figures have lived intensely emotional, often turbulent love lives. The emotional charge becomes a form of energy, volatile, yes, but extraordinarily potent. For a mind already wired for relentless curiosity, love and loss are not distractions, they're propulsion systems. Now, let's go deeper into the neurobiology of this. When someone falls in love, the brain's caudate nucleus and ventral pallidum light up, regions associated with reward and motivation. These areas overlap significantly with those activated by goals and achievements. So, from a purely neurological perspective, romantic love is indistinguishable from ambition. The same chemical systems that drive us to pursue a partner are the ones that push us to build, to innovate, to explore the unknown. This intertwining of systems creates a powerful feedback loop. When love is fulfilling, it provides emotional security that stabilizes the cognitive processes required for deep work. When it's unfulfilled, it can become a source of restless energy, fueling late nights, endless iterations, and risk-taking behavior that others might find irrational, but that often leads to extraordinary breakthroughs. And this brings us to an uncomfortable truth. Genius rarely comes from balance, it comes from tension. The tension between love and loss, between order and chaos, between connection and solitude. When those opposites exist inside one human being, the brain becomes a crucible for transformation. It's under that heat that great ideas are born. I've often observed that people who achieve something truly world-changing are not simply logical, they're emotionally supercharged. They don't just think, they feel their way into innovation. Their empathy allows them to anticipate what humanity needs before humanity even knows it. Their passion gives them endurance that logic alone could never sustain. Neuroimaging studies show that in moments of deep creative insight, the default mode network, the brain system for imagination and introspection, synchronizes with the executive control network responsible for focus and action. This is like intuition and logic shaking hands. It's not just intelligence, it's emotional intelligence embodied at a neural level. But here's the twist: this synchronization often occurs most intensely during emotional upheaval. When someone experiences profound connection or profound loss, the boundaries between these networks blur, leading to surges in creativity. The brain, in trying to make sense of emotional complexity, starts connecting ideas that have never been connected before. That's why heartbreak, paradoxically, can be as productive as love, and this pattern is visible in the lives of innovators throughout history. Think of Nikola Tesla. His emotional isolation became a form of devotion to his work. Think of Leonardo da Vinci. His art was not just visual genius, but emotional transmutation. Think of Marie Curie, whose grief after her husband's death didn't stop her. It intensified her focus, leading to discoveries that would change the world. What we see again and again is this: the human brain doesn't waste emotion, it recycles it. Love becomes innovation. Loss becomes invention. Attachment becomes ambition. And all of it is powered by the same neural architecture. Now, let's bring this closer to the kind of modern success story we all recognize. The story of the relentless entrepreneur, the engineer, the dreamer who pushes technology beyond its limits. It's easy to assume their achievements come purely from intellect and work ethic. But when you look closely, you find traces of something else: moments of connection, heartbreak, longing, devotion, all woven invisibly into the code of their creations. When someone designs a reusable rocket, or an AI system that learns like a child, or a car that runs on pure electric energy, they're not just building machines. They're building metaphors for their inner world. Rockets that escape gravity mirror the human desire to rise above emotional pain. AI that learns mirrors the yearning to understand ourselves. Electric energy symbolizes renewal, the hope to turn chaos into progress. Behind the machinery, there's always emotion. Behind the innovation, there's always love. Because love and invention share one essential trait: they both demand vulnerability. To love someone is to risk being broken. To invent something is to risk being wrong. Both require courage, surrender, and an acceptance of uncertainty. That's why the people who can love deeply often innovate deeply. They've trained their nervous systems to dance with risk. And from a neuroscientific perspective, that dance is everything. Risk activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the part of the brain responsible for detecting errors and adjusting behavior. But when paired with the emotional resilience built through love and connection, that activation becomes a catalyst for adaptation, not paralysis. In other words, love teaches the brain how to handle risk creatively. It's not just a metaphor, it's measurable. Brain scans show that people in love exhibit higher neuroplasticity, meaning their brains rewire more easily. They adapt faster, learn faster, recover faster. This same flexibility is what fuels innovation. So, the connection between love and success isn't mystical, it's biological. But what happens when love becomes complicated? When relationships fall apart? When the person who once grounded you becomes the source of your greatest turbulence? That's when the brain enters a different kind of state, a paradoxical one. The pain circuits and the reward circuits light up simultaneously. You're grieving and driven at the same time. It's chaos, yes, but also creation. Because in that chaos, the brain is forced to rebuild its meaning structure. It begins asking what now, what's next, and that's where reinvention begins. Some of the most daring leaps in innovation happen right after emotional disintegration. It's as if the loss burns away all hesitation, all social filters, leaving behind raw purpose. The brain, deprived of external love, seeks it internally, through creation, through contribution, through changing the world. When we analyze this pattern, we see it not as coincidence, but as circuitry. Emotional loss increases activity in the subgenual anterior cingulate cortex, an area that overlaps with the networks responsible for persistence and goal pursuit. In other words, the same brain that's trying to win back love will also try to win back meaning. That's why heartbreak can propel a person into overdrive. The same neurochemistry that fuels attachment can fuel ambition when redirected, and that's the hidden connection. Love doesn't just inspire success, its absence demands it. When you look at the life of someone who's achieved what seems impossible, launching rockets, building neural networks, electrifying transportation, connecting the world, they're not just solving technical problems. They're metabolizing emotion. They're translating longing into progress. That's why when you peel back the layers of every major innovation, you find a story not of perfection, but of longing. A longing to understand, to connect, to build something that outlasts rejection, pain, and even mortality. The desire to create a better world is often a disguised form of the desire to heal. The greatest minds don't run from their emotions. They mine them. They turn vulnerability into voltage. Every failure becomes circuitry. Every heartbreak becomes design. They know that emotion isn't the opposite of logic. It's the origin of it. Because before logic can exist, there must be something worth understanding, and that something is always emotional. Modern neuroscience tells us that decision-making is not primarily rational. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which governs our most complex choices, is wired directly into emotional memory centers like the amygdala and the hippocampus. That means no decision, no matter how rational it appears, is emotion-free. Emotion gives value to logic. Without emotion, there is no preference, and without preference, there is no choice. So, what happens when a person's emotional life is rich, turbulent, full of deep love and equally deep loss? Their neural pathways are constantly adapting, rewiring, evolving. It's like continuous emotional weightlifting. Every challenge builds endurance. Every heartbreak sharpens emotional precision. Over time, this creates an unusual kind of mind, resilient, intuitive, and relentlessly driven. You might notice this in people who operate at the edge of human potential. Their love lives often mirror their work lives: intense, unpredictable, full of risk, but never dull. The same qualities that make someone capable of changing the world also make them difficult to love. Their focus, their obsession, their constant dialogue with possibility. It's not easy for them to live in ordinary emotional frequencies. But here's the paradox. It's precisely that emotional intensity that powers their greatness. Because to love deeply is to understand deeply. And understanding is the foundation of creation. Every act of invention is an act of empathy, an attempt to imagine what doesn't exist yet, to see what others can't, to feel what humanity might someday need. In the brain, empathy and imagination share a home. They both rely on the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, regions responsible for perspective taking. When we love, we practice that perspective. We tune ourselves to another person's needs, rhythms, and unspoken emotions. That training transfers directly to innovation, because at its core, innovation is emotional resonance turned into technology. When someone designs systems to connect people across the planet, or builds machines to sustain life beyond Earth, they're not just solving equations, they're expressing care at scale. They're taking the intimacy of love and projecting it onto civilization. But of course, there's a cost. The deeper the connection, the deeper the loss when it falters. That's the emotional tax of genius. The same sensitivity that allows someone to dream for humanity also makes them vulnerable to heartbreak that most people can't imagine. Yet it's within that heartbreak that evolution happens, not of biology, but of consciousness. In those moments of silence, when the noise fades and the heart is heavy, something extraordinary can occur. The mind begins to detach from the ego. The person stops trying to be understood and starts trying to understand. That shift, from self-centered ambition to purpose-centered creation, is what separates success from significance. Neuroscience has a word for this transition: neural integration. It's when multiple brain regions, emotional, rational, creative, begin communicating seamlessly. This state doesn't come from comfort, it comes from surrender. When someone has loved deeply and lost deeply, their brain learns to unify complexity instead of escaping it. They no longer divide life into categories like love and work, failure and success, pain and progress. They see them as one interconnected flow of growth. That's why, for some individuals, success isn't just a pursuit, it's a coping mechanism. They build to understand, they create to communicate, they innovate to connect. Their inventions become emotional languages. Think of it this way: the human brain evolved not for survival alone, but for belonging. From the moment we're born, our neurons tune themselves to the faces and voices of others. Connection is our original programming. So, when someone devotes their life to building technology that brings people together, or explores ways to extend human existence, it's not a detour from love. It's love itself expressed through innovation. But to channel love at that scale, you must be willing to live with emotional instability, because passion and peace rarely coexist in the same nervous system. One drives creation, the other sustains it. Few people manage both. Most great creators oscillate between the two, moments of extreme inspiration followed by emotional solitude. And this oscillation is not dysfunction, it's design. The brain's limbic system and neocortex are in constant dialogue. Emotion ignites, reason organizes, creation emerges. Every masterpiece, every rocket, every code line, every symphony is a product of that dance. There's a term I like to use for this phenomenon: emotional propulsion. It's when emotion becomes momentum. The very energy that could destroy you becomes the energy that defines you. When someone learns to ride that wave instead of resisting it, they stop being ruled by emotion and start being powered by it. But that transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires awareness, what neuroscientists call metacognition, the ability to step outside one's thoughts and emotions and observe them objectively, to see love not just as pleasure but as data, to see pain not just as suffering but as signal. When someone reaches that level of emotional mastery, love no longer destabilizes their work, it amplifies it. Heartbreak no longer derails their mission, it deepens it. Their brain becomes a harmonized system of emotion, logic, and vision. We sometimes talk about emotional intelligence as if it's about being calm or kind. But at its highest form, emotional intelligence is about alchemy. It's the ability to convert feeling into forward motion. And that's the essence of success. If you trace the arc of someone who's changed the world, you'll see that every breakthrough was preceded by a breakdown. Every new chapter began with loss. The universe seems to demand that before you can lead others, you must first lose something precious. That loss creates empathy. It burns away arrogance. It makes you porous to the truth. And from that vulnerability, new forms of strength emerge. One's not built on control, but on understanding. That's why some of the most powerful innovations come from people who've experienced deep emotional turbulence. Their technology carries a kind of emotional intelligence. It's intuitive, human, and almost spiritual. We often mistake technology for cold logic. But the most transformative technology is born from love, the love of humanity, the love of possibility, the love of someone specific who awakened the desire to do more, to be more. Love humanizes the machine. When you examine the emotional biographies of great innovators, you'll see that many of their creations were indirect love letters to partners, to families, to humanity itself. A rocket is a love letter to exploration. A neural interface is a love letter to understanding. A car that runs on clean energy is a love letter to the future. Every act of building is, in essence, an act of care. So, the hidden connection between success and love isn't really hidden. It's written in the brain, in the body, in every story of transformation. It's the truth that emotion is not a distraction from greatness. It's the doorway to it. When we deny that truth, we fragment ourselves. We try to live as if the heart and mind were separate. But when we embrace it, when we allow love to inform logic, the two systems amplify each other. Emotion gives meaning, logic gives structure. Together they create impact. The world doesn't need more intelligent people. It needs more emotionally integrated ones. Because intelligence can build machines, but only emotion can give them purpose. So, if there's one message I want you to leave with tonight, it's this: your emotional life is not separate from your success, it is the engine of it. The more deeply you allow yourself to feel, to connect, to risk, to love, the more expansive your capacity to create becomes. Every neuron in your brain is designed for connection. Every synapse is a potential bridge between logic and love, and when those bridges are built, humanity evolves. So, love boldly. Work fearlessly. And remember, the same energy that breaks your heart can also build your future. The circuitry is the same. It's how you wire it that changes everything. Thank you.